All right, hey everybody. So I think I'm here mostly because I'm really old. And what I mean by that is when I got started in the business of healthcare, the business of Canadian healthcare, which was around 2000, I would have been talking in this room to myself. And so it's been a real 20-year journey for me to get to this point, and I know that innovation in Canadian healthcare is not lagging because I look around the room and I see 250 people that are in a room that would have been empty 20 years ago when I started. So for me, I know that we will succeed, and I know we will succeed because of all of you and not because of people like me. And thank you for that. Nevertheless, just to share an anecdote from today to show you that we still have a little bit of a gap in science and technology in Canada. My wife texted me this morning that my new telescope arrived at home. I promptly text her back, it's actually a microscope. She said, well, there's not really any difference anyway. I said, but I'm a doctor, not an astronomer, so I think there is still work to do, but nevertheless. So I'm going to talk a little bit about clinical entrepreneurship, and I see here that Maggie and I share a goal, and that goal is for half of this room, or all of this room, to be clinical entrepreneurs as all of this move forward, and I'm going to share some reasons as to why I think this is. And this is really a happy talk. I don't think I've included my email address anywhere in here, but I'd be more than happy. I have to leave early because I've got a sick kid at home, but for Maggie to share that with any of you who want to chat with me after the fact, so I won't be sort of moseying around a lot. So we're going to talk a little bit about clinical entrepreneurship and what my sort of 20-year journey in all of this has been, starting early and failing fast. So these are some of my day jobs, and I don't think all of my day jobs fit on one slide, but yes, I am a staff physician at St. Mike's. I work in and run our medical and surgical intensive care unit, our cardiac intensive care unit. So I look after the sickest patients in the hospital. About 40% of the patients I see in hospital die, and that's just not because of me. I also teach public health and I teach medicine at U of T. I teach 2 advanced strategy classes. One to physicians and medical residents. They do vastly worse than the people like you that come from non-medical backgrounds that are mid-level health administrators, so don't in any way think I'm pro-physician biased in any of this. I do my own research in the development of new therapies in sepsis and critical illness, do some work on health policy with the system, and as I've gotten really old in all of this and made a lot of mistakes, I now spend a lot of time mentoring others as our executive in residence at St. Mike's. Run our $65 million, 140 doctor practice plan now, as well as do a fair bit on my own in the US with some US venture capital. We have this great inferiority complex in Canada that we're so much more inferior to the US in healthcare and adoption. I can tell you when I go down to the US, they are so excited about the things going on in Canada, both in terms of the technologies that we have, the people we have, and what we have to deliver. So never, never, never think that we are inferior in any way. We certainly are not. I know when Maggie, by the way, talked about different healthcare jobs, my hand went up at least 3 times. I think there were 3 categories because I am an investor, I'm a manager, and I'm a doctor. So I also work in Canada with a $3 billion, now our current fund is $750 million private equity fund. So if any of you guys have a company that's got $5 million or more in profits and you want to sell it for a lot of money, please come and talk to me. So it's never been a straight road for me. It's been a bit of a random walk. I've loved every moment of it. I've had dark days of depression. I've had very wonderful days of success, and they're never the ones you think. These conferences are all sort of modeled off of the TED conference model. Believe it or not, I was actually one of the first TED fellows at TED 2003 when Chris Anderson took over, and none of this existed in healthcare. So yes, I'm really, really old. My mother at my wedding said, David's a great kid and we're glad he's getting married. It's the first real decision he's ever made in his life. And no, I still don't really know what he's ever going to be when he grows up, and I still feel very much the same, and I think that's great, and I think that's fine for all of you as well, so don't worry about that if your mother bothers you. And this is what's really made my life. These people and many others who've mentored me along the way, who've taken risks on me, who've let me be in meetings that I had no business being in, either on the basis of my background or my age, and so you'll recognize Seymour Schulich, one of Canada's great investors, who used to take me for 3-hour walks on Sunday mornings and tell me some very unbridled things about life. Paul Walker, the youngest chief of surgery in the history of Toronto, one of Canada's great healthcare entrepreneurs. Stanley Brown, now the Dean of Public Health at U of T, and David Wortman, my most recent CEO, who taught me everything I know about working in the US, Silicon Valley, and biotech in the US. So mentors make all the difference in the world. I mentor lots of others, and I really do feel that paying it forward makes a big, big difference. These people have been very selfless. This is an article written by a couple of colleagues of mine at McKinsey. One of the things I did years ago was start the Canadian healthcare practice for McKinsey & Company, which is a big global consulting firm. It was an article entitled Physician Leadership and Entrepreneurship. Again, I think it's really all about clinical entrepreneurship, and because us as physicians and clinicians really do know a lot about the Rubik's Cube, and it's not just because we're implementing the solutions, as Maggie said, but because we see the solutions, we see the way the system can evolve, can work, can become more sustainable. So this is sort of a top 10 list that I've shortened to 9 from something called the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs from the US. I like their definition that entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity with scarce, uncontrolled resources. The definition of entrepreneurship that I learned from a guy by the name of Stephen Rogers, who's a professor of entrepreneurship at Kellogg, where I went to business school, is entrepreneurs are people who have a very asymmetric view of their own likelihood of success versus the market likelihood of failure. And so, fail early, fail fast, and don't be afraid to take risks, and that's certainly something I've done many times. Innovation, qualitative, quantitative innovation to make a difference in the lives of our patients, and this notion of 10x return. Physicians think that innovation is, I own a clinic, I'll buy more clinics. Innovation is not about buying and owning more clinics, it's about making a 10x, 100x difference to the system at large, and that's what you're all here to do. There are a million different things you can do. I've got at least 10 I can take off my plate, so please, by all means, find a place, make a difference. Do work for free. One of the great things I've done in my life is just get out there, not worry about, I'm a physician making X dollars an hour and you've asked me to advise you as a board member in your technology company, you have to pay me X. It's never about that. I've never done anything in my life because of money. I've always done things because of the people I work with. I rarely even do them because of the quality of the idea. I just want to work with great people all the time, and great people will always make a bad idea good. Good ideas will always fail in the hands of the wrong people. Physician entrepreneurship enhances professionals. So, you all read in the Toronto Star. I know we're standing in their building, but most doctors don't love a lot of the Toronto Star very much. So you all read in the Toronto Star about physicians and nurses and other conflicts of interest in the healthcare system. There is no conflict. Sure, if someone's giving you $1 million to prescribe their drug, that's a big problem. But if you're out there innovating, trying to make the system different, that's the kind of alignment we need. A colleague of mine at Harvard once said that the definition of a good doctor at Harvard is the 50% that have companies. And in fact, if you look at some of the great biotech companies in the world, so I think about Amgen and Genentech, both were started by physicians, or at least in part. Physician entrepreneurs create values for patients, absolutely. So it's not all about seeing patients one-on-one all day long. I saw 29 patients in clinic in Barrie. I go there once a month. On Friday, I was really tired, and and there are a lot of other ways you can make a difference in the system. We will make a difference through all of the things that all of you guys are working on, whether that's digital health or health data or whatever else it is. There's no magic answer, but we are not failing in Canada on innovation. Yes, there are some issues with market adoption in Canada and how we procure things and other things, and those are one of our problems, but we are certainly not failing on innovation. So I just want to give a few shout outs to some of the companies that and people that I've been mentoring. I don't know if any of these are previous presenters here, but just to tell a few stories about how these people have done great things. One of them is my colleague Karen Cross, who's a plastic surgeon and has a PhD in wound care and near-infrared spectrometry. She partnered with Jennifer Leung there, who's a MRI physicist. They decided, Karen was spending a lot of her time chopping feet off of diabetics. When she realized that that wasn't a very good thing, she decided to develop an iPhone-based camera that can assess tissue-level oxygen in wounds, has gone on to transition to this being the major focus of her non-clinical work, spends about 80% of her time running this company, is now through a Series A. I sent her down to the US to go meet a colleague of mine named Billy Kahn, who's the head of the J&J Innovation Lab in Houston, and she's well on her way to great success with Mimosa. Lyric Pharmaceuticals, so here's my example of success and failure. So this is a company that was started by David Wortman, who I talked about before, and Scott Harris, who's a gastroenterologist. One of the things I see in my clinical practice is that people survive critical illness, and they survive critical illness, and lo and behold, they can't walk. So you've spent a month in the ICU recovering from your life-threatening infection or your trauma or whatever else it is, your muscles melt away and you can't walk anymore. So we spent a lot of time developing a drug called Grelin or Ulimarelin to treat this problem in the US, raised $40 million, ran a large clinical trial in about 4 countries, and the study ultimately failed, but we are continuing to work on this problem. So yes, I've had my own failures too, lots of them. This is another Canadian success story. So this is a company that I was on the board of called STI Technologies. This was a partnership between an IT executive, Stephen Nicole on the right in Halifax. So again, to show you that innovation happens everywhere in this country. This was a company started by 3 pharmaceutical representatives in Nova Scotia who didn't think that drug samples that you get in physician offices were very efficient. 30% of them end up in physicians' homes for the treatment of their family. The other 70% are completely untrackable. So they developed a drug card that you could redeem at a pharmacy so that your prescription or your sample would then be trackable. That company ultimately scaled to being 100 drugs on this card in the hands of 1.5 million Canadians, and ultimately through the help of venture capital was sold for $187 million, which was the largest health tech exit in Eastern Canada, and was actually sold to IMS Health, now Qvia or whatever their current name is. They've changed 3 times. And then just to talk on the public sector side, so I mentioned Staney Brown. Staney Brown and I, in 2010, I was a senior policy advisor to the Ministry of Health when Staney was the Minister of Strategy and Sustainability, or Assistant Deputy Minister. And Staney had a problem that he had recognized. His own mother at the time was suffering with cancer. She'd had very poor care, unfortunately, in a community outside of London, Ontario. Did much better in Canada. Staney's passion became quality, healthcare quality, certainly something that I know RL Solutions is very passionate about. And so he designed something called the Excellent Care for All Act. I helped support him in that. This is where all of your QBPs and quality metrics, healthcare accountability issues come today. So this is really about bringing innovation where CEOs are actually paid a part of their variable pay now based on the quality and performance of their institution, which was an innovation in Canadian healthcare. So innovation can be public, innovation can be private. I promised Aaron that I would give a little shout out to Pentavere for the work that they're doing in healthcare data. Again, a really important innovation in healthcare in Canada. The bottom line is you're here, I'm here, we are not behind in healthcare innovation in Canada, and we will succeed. What will I do next? I don't know. I don't think it's about reading textbooks. I don't think it's about doing MBAs. It's about following the rules you learned in kindergarten, sharing, collaborating, not hitting anyone, playing fair. And what will I do next? What will you do next? I don't know, but I hope to collaborate with all of you and see us succeed.
Thank you.